I would like to introduce Mohamed Gibril and Shukri Yakhlif. They will be representing the Libyan history in their presentation entitled Libya Older Than History.
Would it be possible if I use the microphone instead? Thank you, sir. And Shukri, please come and have a seat. I've been bragging him all day about it. Libya older than history. When I was doing this presentation, I thought about it for a while. History itself as a field of science started probably 2,000-3,000 years ago, but the Libyan history goes way back in time than 3,000 or 4,000 years. Therefore, we decided that it's better to have such a name. First of all, it's catchy. I like it personally, and it tells the truth about Libya. For the past 40 years, the Libyan history was used as a tool. So if the regime wanted to emphasize, for example, the relations with the Arab countries, it wouldn't mention anything about history except the part where it speaks about Arab culture or Arabic culture. When it wanted to create the African Union, it started emphasizing on the African heritage and African culture in Libya. But however, Libyan culture and Libyan history is bigger than that. Before I start, I think it's essential to know some facts about Libya. The name Libya itself, historically, is driven from the Berber tribe Ribo, or Rivo. The Greeks adopted it and changed it to Libo, then it was changed to the modern word Libya. Historically, Libya is made of 3 provinces: Fezzan in the south, Cyrenaica in the east, Tripolitania in the west. It got its independence in 1951 after a bloody struggle against the Italians. It got its independence peacefully through the United Nations. In fact, my colleague Shukri will speak further about that. It was horrendous crimes committed against the Libyans. About half of the Libyan population was eliminated or exterminated by the Italians in concentration camps. We have the longest coast in the Mediterranean Sea. Libya is located in the heart of North Africa. It has the longest coast in the Mediterranean Sea. It has very, very nice beaches. So most Libyans in the summer would spend their days in front of the sea. We are the 17th largest country in the world. Libya is massive. And we have a very small population, which I will mention like a few points later. We are the 8th largest oil producer in the world. But I think it's worth mentioning that the US only imports 2% of our oil, and my colleague Hakim will go into further details about that. The population is about 6.5 million, and 97% of Libyans are Muslims. So the Libyan history starts when the desert was green. Archaeologists believe that the carvings found in the southern Libya in the desert are dated from 10 to 12,000 years BC. So they are very, very ancient. And you can see like depictions of giraffes and other animals in the desert. Back then, archaeologists believed that the desert was green and it was a savanna. Animals lived there, people lived there. Ancient Libyans were known to ancient Egyptians. They were mentioned in many manuscripts and in temples. You can find a lot of drawings about Libyans in Egyptian temples, and even Egyptians adopted the name Libo to call Libyans. In fact, part of Western Egypt and Eastern Libya was ruled by Berber tribes such as the Timhu and Tehnu and Libo, and then Mishwish as well. So we were famous in the ancient world. We have a very diverse history, but again, I tried this a few minutes ago, about 30 minutes, with some of our guests here, and I tried to ask, when you think of Libya, what do you think of? Feel free to speak out loud. What do you think of? Some said desert, which is true. Others said Gaddafi, and even Gaddafi himself said that. He said, when you ask about Libya, what do people say? They say Gaddafi. So the whole country was represented in this man. In fact, we have a very diverse, very, very, very big history. Starting with the Berbers of Libya, the Amazigh, and it goes up to 12,000 years. We had the Phoenicians in Tripolitania, and they established big cities, massive cities. And we had Greeks in Cyrenaica, and they established 5 colonies there, and they are massive, and they are very famous in human history. And then we had the Romans take over the whole region, including Libya, and one of the biggest preserved Roman cities outside Italy are in Libya. And then the Muslim conquest, which also filled with misconceptions about what happened. And then we had the Turkish control for about 500 years. And then Italian colonization, which, as I mentioned earlier, was full of disasters to Libyans. So before I start, I would like to mention some famous figures that came from Libya. Starting with Shishak I. He's the Egyptian pharaoh who created the 22nd dynasty. And you can see his face there. He looks so much like my colleague, Shukri. In fact, both of them are Berber, from Berber origin. But you look better, don't you? Shishak ruled in Egypt from about 1929 BC to about 1950. And he created the 22nd dynasty, which lasted for hundreds of years. And then we have Eratosthenes. He's famous. I know a lot of people here who can recognize Eratosthenes. He was the one to first try to measure the surface of the earth. He's from Cyrene, Libya. And that's why he was called Eratosthenes of Cyrene, if you check in history. Again, Aristippus is one of the students of Socrates, and he established the Cyrenaican school of philosophy, which had a very interesting approach to life, and I would recommend doing further readings about it. Apostle Mark in the Bible. Of course, we know that the New Testament in the Bible have 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Mark actually is Libyan from Cyrene, and if you go and search him, and even Google him, you'll find that his name, he was called Mark of Cyrene. And another famous figure from the Bible is Simon of Cyrene, whom, according to the Gospel of John, was the one to carry the cross for Jesus after Jesus couldn't carry his cross. So again, all these figures are from Libya, but again, many knew some of these figures, but how many did know that those figures were from Libya? I can tell not many. Alright, I'll speak a bit about Tripolitania, or modern-day Tripoli. Of course, the name Tripoli itself comes from Latin, which can be understood in the following. 2 words: Tripoli, Tripolis, 3 cities. So basically it's made of 3 cities, at least historically. The first is Oya, which is modern-day Tripoli. As you can see there, some of the ruins are still standing in Tripoli. The second, and it was the biggest, Leptis Magna. And a very famous figure came from Leptis Magna, which is the Emperor Lucius Septimus Severus. He ruled for about 50 years in Rome, and he was Libyan. And he comes from the same city that my colleague, he's somewhere here, Fituri, comes from. Yeah, he's there, and they look alike as well. But in this picture, he looks better than you.
Yeah, I see.
Sabrata. Sabrata was one of the biggest cities out of Rome. And actually it has a very nice preserved theater, which you can see few alike in the world today. It is made of 3 stories, and it can hold up to 20,000 people. Now I'll speak briefly about Cyrenaica, how it was found. Again, it was found with a lot of myth and a lot of stories, but bottom line, it was made of 5 cities and was called historically Pentapolis, meaning Penta 5, Polis cities, so the 5 cities. It was found by the Greeks, and it flourished. It was big, and it was economically active. It was found about 2,800 years ago, so basically before northern Greece. So the Libyan colonies, Greek colonies, were found before northern Greece, Saloniki, which is the area where Alexander the Macedonian comes from. The cities are still standing there, most of them. For example, Cyrene now is modern-day Shahat, Apollonia, modern-day Susa, Tokara, actually still carrying the same name, Eusperides, which is modern-day Benghazi, Barsa, which is modern-day Merj. The Muslim conquest, many think of war when you think like Muslim conquest of North Africa. But in fact, when the Muslims arrived, most of the cities were destroyed and devastated after an earthquake, and then Cyrene, for example, had the Jewish revolt, which the Romans put down with a lot of violence, which led to the destruction of the city. But when the Muslims arrived in North Africa, they were a minority. Even if you think about it, Muslims coming from Arabia, what are the numbers that come from Arabia, from that desert area? Not many. So now, for example, the Egyptians who are living in Egypt are the same Egyptians who lived thousands of years ago in Egypt. They still carry the same DNA. They're not ethnically speaking Arabs. And the modern city, for example, Tripoli, it still carries the same things that it did during the Roman period. You can see the columns here used are Roman columns, which were used to rebuild the city. Because culture changed, but the people are still the same, and they still use the same resources. And thank you for listening.